Good morning, fabulous people. Welcome back to Handing the Shame Back, my channel dedicated to child sexual abuse survivors here in New Zealand and out across the world. This show is dedicated to you solely because it doesn't get the attention it should, and it's seen as a huge, massive, silent endemic out there. So we're here to make it loud, and we're going to be proud of the fact we're doing that. The more of us that hear about this, the more we can hand the shame back. Right, so trigger warning. We do talk about content that is disturbing to viewers. If you get triggered at any stage, please turn this off, go to the show notes where you will be directed for help. You're not alone out there. You never have been. There's a lot of us. Okay, so moving on. We've got a fabulous guest today, and I think you're going to get a lot from listening to what she has to say. I'm excited, and I've only had a few minutes talking to her pre-show. So this is Maria Socolof. In 2017, she established the website Healing from Chronic Pain. In 2020, she wrote her memoir, The Invisible Key, Unlocking the Mystery of My Chronic Pain. And wait, there's more. Last year, she co-founded 5 Waves, which is an organisation promoting awareness on sibling sexual abuse. She'll tell you all about this in much more detail, I promise. But in the meantime, welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you here. So just for our audience to know, what part of the States are you in?
I am in New York on Long Island.
Yay! Oh, I'm coming over.
Yes, welcome. Anytime.
So thank you. So Maria, tell us a little bit about, sibling sexual abuse is quite prevalent out there, but again, anything to do with sexual abuse of children tends to be this massive silent endemic. Can you tell us a little bit, or what you're comfortable with, regarding your experience, so our audience can understand, please?
Sure. I'll start by saying I did not remember what happened to me till I was 42 years old. So I went through my childhood, as far as I knew, a happy child, and I really was. Everything was going along wonderfully. I have 2 parents that love me, and a family that I was very happy in growing up, upper middle class, where I got to do the things I wanted to do. I was a gymnast, got to do all that through college. Everything was going well until I hurt my neck when I was 40. So I went through a college career of gymnastics without any major injury, made it through the rest of my life till I was 40, and all of a sudden I rolled over in my sleep and ruptured a disc in my neck, and just out of the blue. It just seemed very bizarre, but I was in excruciating pain, and so I'm giving this introduction, and I'll jump back to your question, but this is how it came to me. So I hurt my neck. For 2 years I couldn't get resolution. I was in severe pain. I was doing everything the doctors were saying, and it was fluctuating a little bit. They'd give me some shots, it would help for a little while, but that pain never was going away fully. And I did have surgery and everything. And that just sort of may have triggered what ended up being this myofascial pain syndrome. But it's just a chronic neck pain is what I've had. So after 2 years of trying everything, I started to do some body work. And that's when everything started to come to a head. And I realized it was, I went to a 2-week intensive of body work after I'd done about 3 or 4 months with a local therapist a couple of times a week. And my pain was starting to come down, and it was helping me release some of the tension that I didn't even know I had. But then I hit this plateau. So I went to this 2-week intensive where I went away and had 3 sessions a day, hour session, but I had 3 sessions a day for 2 weeks. And it was at the end of that 2 weeks when I remembered. So just a little background on that too. In those 2 weeks, I was having all these emotional releases during that body work. And it wasn't until the last day that the memory came back. And it didn't come back in the session. It actually came back the morning. I had a dream the night before, the morning before, when I woke up before my last day. I had a dream that reminded me. So it was crazy. So I'd gone 42 years. I was 42 at that point, not knowing anything had happened to me, not knowing why I was in chronic pain either that wouldn't go away. So that was the link that I finally discovered. So what I remembered was that my brother had molested me. I thought I was 10, I wasn't sure, but that's the age that came to my mind. And it was a one-time thing. And the dream, it wasn't of exactly what happened. It was us as adults actually, but it reminded me, it was a very strange dream of, of my brother coming to touch me as an adult. And it was bizarre. And it just, so when I woke up, I was just frozen there in my bed thinking, oh my God, like what? And it was clear. It was so clear. So there was no question in my mind, except I was still doubting it because half of me probably did not want to know this was true.
No.
And so I was just sort of in disbelief, but knew in my core, deep core, that it was true. And it was such a bizarre feeling to know something so viscerally, to know it was true, but to not have known your whole life. So I kept saying, how could I not have known this? How could I not have known this? So that was it. It was a one-time thing. It turns out, I'm not here to tell his story, but he had been molested outside of the home before that. And that's what happened here, because we didn't have it in the family. There was no other incidents in the family of this happening as far as within the family. So it was that one time. The memory was the most pristine memory I've ever had. And it's interesting now, that was 14 years ago, whatever it was 2007 when I remembered. And now it's not that, it's clear. I still know exactly what happened, but it's like the film is a little blurry now. Like when I remembered, it was the clearest thing I'd ever experienced. Now that I've processed so much, it's kind of nice. It's not so intense of a memory. But so that's my story, is that it happened once. And a little bit more of the story that we discovered. Again, I don't remember this, but a couple years later, or a year later, there's an airplane. I don't know if you can hear it. Sorry.
It's fine.
A year after, I remembered my parents actually found a box in the attic. They were cleaning out their attic because they were moving. They found a box with some letters that I had written as a child to them. And one of them was when I was 10, and it was this nasty note to my mother, just mean. And I love my mother. I've always loved my mother, never thought anything bad of her consciously. And I had written this kind of nasty note, and my dad wrote in the corner, he said, when mother wouldn't sleep with daughter, and he put the date, it was 1975, September 1975, September 2nd, he wrote. And all I can put together is that I asked her to sleep with me that night. And she, as you would tell your 10-year-old, go to your own room. I have my own kids. I would have said the same thing, go sleep in your own room. So I, again, putting the pieces together, it feels to me that I asked her to sleep with me. She rejected me. I took that as either she's not going to believe me, she didn't believe me, she didn't want to know, whatever. And it went away forever, not forever, for 32 years. It went away. And I had no conscious memory until I was in that treatment. So so that's my story. Like I said, I had parents that loved me. So I had support, but they didn't know. So they didn't know I needed the support in this way. So I hid it from myself, from everybody, for all that time. And, went on to be a gymnast and did all these things to keep me strong. Now looking back, I kind of see, things start to make sense of how I behaved. And I think of it as lucky in the way I didn't get into drugs. I didn't get into other addictive things that could be more harmful. So I did it that way. I did more of the perfectionist and the gymnast and athlete way of going to kind of hide it all and to hold it down until I could deal with it, which was apparently at age 42.
And isn't the mind a powerful thing that it kept you safe all those years and protected you?
Yep.
But thank you so much for sharing that, because as I'm listening, I'm thinking of our audience out there. You know, for those of you that have suffered from sibling sexual abuse, you can imagine the multi-dimensional challenges that brings. And I guess, you know, who do you go to and who do you tell? So just let me check in with Maria, callers. So Maria, and at age 42, when the memory came back and you were able to integrate that, imagine that would have been painful. Did you, or what happened then? Were you able to talk to your brother or your parents, or where did that go?
Yeah. So I felt completely comfortable talking. I first told my mother. She was actually home helping to take care of my kids when I was away at that treatment for my neck. So when I came home, they were going to my parents were still there for one more night. So the first thing I did was tell her. And yeah, I knew it was hard and uncomfortable, but, as a 42-year-old, very different from a child.
Yes.
Trying to do it. So I felt okay. I had a good relationship with my mother for all those intervening years. So I was able to tell her. She was gracious. We cried. She said, "I'm so sorry." She's a psychologist, and who even worked with families with incest. And she's like, "I had no idea. I never saw any clues." She said, "I hid it well." It was, and I think something you might have alluded to is that it's so difficult in a family where I really believe, I don't know consciously if this is what I did, but I feel like I did not want to break up my family.
No.
Even in therapy, that kind of came up. I remember a therapist telling me something related to that. And I said, that would be the worst. Like, that would be awful. So I think that's what we do. We hide it because that's our survival as our parents.
Yes.
And, we need that family. So I was lucky. My mother was, lovely. And then after a couple of days, I emailed my brother, and he didn't live nearby me anyway. So I emailed him. I said, did you remember this? I got home and I just had to explode with this. There was no even thought about, I knew, I was a little hesitant, but I just knew it was killing me. I realized this. Oh, I didn't mention though, that day after my memory came back, my pain dropped significantly.
Oh, wow.
In that day. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's when I was like, I knew the connection was real, and it didn't completely go away. And I still to this day deal with some of the neck pain, but it's nowhere near the way it was. And having that significant drop, and then it stayed that way, because I would have shots and I would have other things done and the pain would just come back, but it didn't come back to that level. So I knew that was the crux of it. And all the other traumas, all the other things that I may have done, even falling on my head in gymnastics, all add up to make my neck weak. But I feel like it was that abuse. I even tend, for my situation, I don't even like the word abuse. I do call it trauma, because it was traumatizing to me, even though it may not appear as abusive. He was, kind of acting out on his trauma. And he only did it once. It wasn't like he was maliciously doing it over and over, which does happen in other cases. But so nonetheless, it was, I say I was molested. I was traumatized. And
so what happened when you spoke to him? What happened when you emailed him?
So he was also amazingly gracious, I like to say, because he said, yes, I'm responsible for what happened. And he completely owned it. And I don't know to this day if he's actually said, I am sorry, to me. He said, I'm sorry what happened. Not really for what he did. So I can parse the words, but I was really happy to have gotten the corroboration, also because I wanted to think I was crazy.
Yes.
Because, could this really be? How could I not know this?
Yeah.
And for me to tell other people, because I knew all the controversy. I was aware of the controversy of recovered memories. I hadn't gotten deep into that before, but I was aware of it. And I thought, oh, good, at least I don't have to fight that battle. I'm told by the person who did it that it's true. So that was a huge relief to me at that point.
And did he, how much older was he than you? Or
I
is
don't
he
want to give too many specifics,
Okay.
but not that much older.
Not that much older. Okay. So
We're close. Yeah, I don't. He's less than 5 years.
less than 5 years. Okay.
Difference.
Yeah, still. Well, I mean, for some of our audience out there, they won't have perhaps a sibling that would own up to that. So I'm grateful that you had that. In some ways, I imagine that helped and helped corroborate in the craziness, which often as survivors we get labelled anyway, where you must be deluded or you're crazy or you're making it up or you've always been the one that, there can be lots of labels attached. So I'm grateful you didn't have that. For those survivors listening out there who don't necessarily have that or haven't been afforded that, we believe you, and for you to find the courage to even speak the words to one person helps enormously to alleviate. Make sure it's someone that you trust, because this is a sacred thing. You are growing, as you rediscover who you really are, minus that. So I just wanted to throw that in. So Maria, wow, what a journey. And when you consider all for instance, you've co-founded 5 Waves, which is dedicated to sibling sexual abuse survivors. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because some of our audience may be very interested in reaching out.
Right. Yeah, in fact, it's not only for survivors, it's for the whole family. It's for the parents as well, it's for survivors, and it's for the children who cause the harm, because there's also the chance that our goal is to prevent this. So to get those children who might be having some thoughts and get them to see that this does happen, and kids have these thoughts of maybe doing something and maybe stopping it before it happens. And then for the ones that actually did, to get them help too, because the research is showing that they don't go on to become pedophiles. So, they're children too. So I'll jump back and tell you a little bit what 5 Waves is.
So is this a place for adults though, for adult survivors of this as well to go to?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's the website that let me tell you, 5 Waves is 5 women, 5 of us who basically found each other this fall. We were all dealing with sibling sexual trauma in some way. 2 of us are survivors and 3 are parents. So 2 of us are adult survivors. And so it just kind of happenstance, we all found each other at the same time. And one of our partners, Brandy, was creating a website, and which is now online as of January, and it's siblingsexualtrauma.com. And it is for all audiences. It's for adult survivors. It's for, like I said, for parents and for child victims, as well as the ones who caused harm. So it refers, a lot of it is referring to other places. Like for the adult survivors, it's not, we don't have anything active that we do. We don't have conferences or workshops or anything at this point. We're kind of an information hub. So if you go to that site, there just has been not anything comprehensive in one location, or really anything at all, on sibling sexual trauma.
No.
So this is the first time, like when everybody, I didn't go looking for it, but all the other 4 women, because I was just trying to heal my pain. Like I didn't even think I want to find other people with this. I just knew child sexual abuse was, enough of a category to me to find the people that I needed to help me heal. But I always felt a little off, and it didn't always match. When it's a sibling situation, it's a little different.
Yes.
So it's not,
of course,
especially when it's an adult, it's very different.
Yeah.
And other incest, it's the same where it's in the family, but again, it's still a little different when it's your siblings. So so it was great to find these women, and we kind of banded together, and we were all doing our own things. Brandy was making the website. Jane had just been accepted to do a TEDx talk. I had just published my book, and the other 2 women are working. One has a Facebook page just for parents dedicated to this, and another one is going to work on resources for parents too.
Yeah.
So we just want to speak out about this.
Yes.
Is kind of the primary thing at this point, so that people know they're not alone, because it is so silent, like you said at the beginning. It's so hard to talk about, and many people just say still they're never going to talk about it till their parents are gone, till their siblings got whatever. It's just something they're going to hold in forever. And
they carry the pain of it.
And I physically carried that pain. And I just decided there was a point I can't stay silent.
No.
I didn't even know I was staying silent for all that time. So it was only, literally a matter of weeks that I knew I was silent, but I knew I had to get it out.
And look, and I think to your book, The Invisible Key, Unlocking the Mystery of Your Chronic Pain, is really valuable. So can you tell us a bit more about that, please? Because I know that came out last year, or was published last year.
Yeah, actually, I think it's 2 years now, but it.
So I thought it was 20. Oh, it is 2020.
2020. Yeah. I've lost a year in my head anyway. I feel
like
it was a year ago. But so it follows my journey, kind of like I explained, of how I didn't know that there was any sexual trauma or anything behind my pain. So I find I want to speak out also, not only about sibling sexual trauma, but about the connection of pain and trauma and illness and trauma. And it's so linked, and it's so well understood in the trauma field and other fields, but the medical field doesn't get it. And even the psychological field and medicine, they don't really come together on that. And I spent 2 years trying to heal and doing everything any specialist told me to do. And it wasn't working. It wasn't until I started to dig into it and look into more things. And for me, body work was one of the critical things, like I explained, but it's been a whole journey too. So I do talk about that journey, and just how we need to recognize what pain can be saying, and it's our body holding in trauma or other emotional distress. Doesn't even have to be a major trauma necessarily, but certainly trauma has its play in our physical bodies.
It sure does. And what I really like about what you're saying is that, really underlying all of that is the body is always aiming or heading for healing. It's always heading for optimum functioning. And if there is a pain that won't go away, in your case particularly, and for other SSA survivors out there, it could be linked to this, guys. It could be worth getting out there and finding something in your area. Is there a specific modality you would recommend that perhaps is global, Maria, for people to find a place or resource to try and activate some of that, or unleash?
I'll tell you what I did, and I don't necessarily say it's the only one. I can list several other things too that I've, in fact, on my website, I have a list of a lot of options that people can try that I believe take into account, or that do take into account, the mind-body connection that I think is so critical in healing. But what it was for me was this John Barnes method of myofascial release therapy. So JFB MFR. And it is global. There are practitioners that are global. There's a website, myofascialrelease.com, I believe, and there's a find a therapist tab, excuse me, that you can look for. And they're all the therapists aren't on there necessarily. There's also a Facebook page with therapists and patients on there who can interact, and you can ask there if there's if there's other therapists in your area. So
what's your website called?
So my website is healingfromchronicpain.com. And I have a treatments tab. It tells some of my story, but I have a treatments tab that talks about the different treatments that I've tried and that I think are worth trying, even for the ones I haven't tried. But there's also things like somatic experiencing. Peter Levine is the one who developed that. There's sensory motor psychotherapy. So if you're more on the psychotherapy side of things, if you're more comfortable with that, but the one who originated that is Dr. Pat Ogden. Again, sensory motor psychotherapy, and she understands and works with that mind-body connection, as similar to Peter Levine. So, and also a book just to read is The Body Keeps the Score by
Yes.
Bessel van der Kolk.
Yes.
It's an excellent book about
book.
trauma in your body, how it holds,
Yeah.
how we hold trauma in our body. So those are some things I would recommend to start to understand this link. And so many people understandably don't understand the link because it's just not talked about in that way. And doctors don't learn about it in that way, sadly. So
unfortunately, as we've said a couple of times already, and for our audience out there, for those that have experienced or suffered sibling sexual abuse, because it's never discussed, it's never acceptable in society, but like female abuse or mother abuse, it's seen as therefore it can't be happening, or to very few. And we know the numbers, we know it's quite a bit bigger percentage than you might like to imagine. So I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you was, as a survivor of this, when you think about the relationship with parents that love you, a brother who willingly admitted, which is all kind of best case scenario, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it really is.
What are there any kind of guiding steps or light you would offer in terms of how our audience might be able to raise this with parents or with a sibling? Or any kind of tips around that?
It's so hard because every situation is so individual.
Yes.
And that. So, for me, I knew I felt comfortable to begin with going to my parents. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I guess, one of the things I would say is, when you're comfortable, and whether it's your parents first or not, whoever you think you can tell, even if it's a therapist, or a friend or somebody, just to kind of test the water. I found myself doing that a lot, even with friends and other people. I would kind of tell somebody, like once I told my mother and my brother and my husband, then, it was like, do I tell other people this? So I, even though I passed that test of the hardest one, kind of in the family, but I still was hesitant and nervous and scared to tell other people. So I would sometimes tell somebody who I didn't even know that well. And, if I lost that relationship, hey, that's okay. So I would do that. And I, tested a few that way, or somebody I knew I wasn't going to see for a long time. So I did a little bit of that to see what the reactions were. And because I got mostly positive reactions throughout this whole journey, but there were a couple that, are you sure? And well, why would I be telling you this? I wasn't sure. So as far as tips, I think, just be prepared for anything. I've talked to enough people too now that, they don't always get that response that they're hoping for. And know that we can heal ourselves in spite of what happens outside. So if we don't get that support we're dying for, we really want, there's going to be somebody else out there who can listen, and will listen. We're listening, we'll listen, and a therapist, or, just keep seeking it out, because holding it in, as I experienced, was killing me. It slowly kills us. I mean, I don't want to be dramatic, but so if you can tell, it doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be in public. It doesn't have to be a grand, announcement. But just saying it, saying it to yourself. I mean, even when I was in therapy, in the myofascial therapy, I mean, I was saying it, somebody was there, but I could not make the words come out of my mouth. And I felt like I was in a safe little bubble. It was just me and a therapist. And I didn't want to hear it. So it took me a long time, even just to say it out loud, or even say it in my head and then say it out loud. So it's a process. And I would say, just keep working at it, because it did take me kind of years I did those first right away. I told the first people, but it can take a long time to get it out. But I think it's important, because holding it in is just, our bodies and our minds are just stuck there, and it's not healthy, and we want to heal, and it's going to keep doing bad things you know, until we can take care of our bodies and our minds.
And I love that. And I guess too, as I'm thinking about what, you know, CSA survivors experience and SSA survivors, I imagine that, you know, things like the shame and guilt in some cases are just as prevalent. Things like the dissociation, hypervigilance, you know, even to the point where you wanted mum with you for that situation, you know, and also I guess that that feeling of isolation or aloneness, because as survivors, and I'll get you to talk a bit about this, Maria, you know, as survivors of sexual abuse, we tend to feel different and that we don't quite fit. And that's quite a hallmark. And I guess I'm just thinking for our sibling sexual abuse survivors out there, you know, whether that's something that you would say is also attached to that, or something you could talk to, Maria. Is that something you would?
Yeah, you said so many things that I could talk about at length.
I was just
probably.
meaning the feeling different.
But the feeling different part. So there were definitely through this process. And again, I had my whole life where I didn't know. So I didn't feel different until I started doing
until you started doing this.
Be
careful what you wish for, audience.
Yeah, right. So I just, even I've been looking over some things that I wrote back then recently, and just I kept using the term being normal. Like I wanted to be normal again. I'm not normal anymore. Normal. What's normal? Then what is normal? So to me, that's how I think it manifested in my mind, was I'm different now. Like I'm not who I thought I was. I don't know what I am, but I'm different. I'm in a different category. So I really felt like I was put in another box now, and I didn't know where I belonged until I started to really find these communities. And that's where I found a lot of healing, just in finding people who just get it and you can be with and talk to and understand without having to go through all the background and everything else. So and the isolation and all that, I felt very alone through all this, not even realizing why or what was going on, but I definitely felt alone in this long journey that I didn't know would ever end. Still ongoing, but it's made a lot of progress.
And I think a survivor community out there, your 5 waves sounds amazing for people to feel they have got a family out there, that you're not alone and you're instantly believed. And I think that's the value of work like what you are doing and what we're trying to do out in the community is having people feel they're not alone, and we see you and we hear you and we believe you.
And we believe you, right? Exactly.
So Maria, you're very welcome to comment on any of the 5 million things I threw at you earlier, if you would like to.
I'm trying to remember what they were.
It was just the shame and guilt.
Oh, the shame,
the same.
And the shame for sure. And that was something that I didn't realize. Like, again, all of this, if I did start talk therapy as well, but I was doing more of the body work, because for me, that would bring up emotions that I don't think I could access by words. If somebody asked me something, everything was fine, all good. And shame was something that came up, I didn't realize till a therapist in the myofascial work made a comment when I kept covering my eyes. I'm in therapy, I'm crying, screaming, whatever I'm doing. And I was like, very tightly closing my eyes and covering my eyes. And they told me that's a gesture of shame. And now when that happens, I realize it. And that's sort of the one thing that is still to this day. And I feel like, I have no shame. I'm here, I'm talking, but I'll be in that therapy when my body does what it knows is going on. Like I don't use my frontal cortex at that point, and my body's just reacting and acting, and shame still comes up just recently. So it's there, and that seems to be the deepest thing, because the anger, the sadness, the fear, gone through all that too. That doesn't come back the way the shame still comes back. So it's deep.
It's so powerful, and I so support what you're saying. And it's interesting because it doesn't seem to matter how healed we become or how far through we get. It's the shame always is the last point, the last big thing to overcome. And I think it's what keeps us so quiet. I think it's so hard for people to speak out about this, and partly it's conditioning, and partly it's society struggles to accept it because they don't want to, not that they don't believe, but they don't want to believe.
Right.
There's a difference. And I think, that's partly why this handing the shame back is so important to me, because I'm in my 60s now, and it's taken me all these years to be able to speak out and own what happened, and just shout my way through the world now about this. But really, survivors, don't take a leaf out of my book. Don't take decades. Speak out, however quietly you need to. However you do it, is that shame is what renders us quiet, and that's what helps keep the cycle going. I know it's not our fault, but it does help keep the cycle going.
And I think that's another thing that the 5 Waves wants to do, is get this early, so the kids that are sadly experiencing it now are able to talk about it. Yeah. Because maybe society, we can talk about it a little more, and maybe they don't have to hold it for decades and then have it fester. In my mind, that's what happened. It just stays in there, and it just has no outlet, and it just, I think it intensifies.
It's
not
just
scientific evidence, but that's
there's so many tentacles, aren't there? And and with this, and we need to honor ourselves. It's you guys out there, honor ourselves for where we are and what we have been able to do, and aren't we amazing human beings? So please assimilate that. Maria, as you think about this, some of the other hallmarks, in my humble opinion, of child sexual abuse are, and I'll list them again, and please weigh in. They are dissociation, hypervigilance, feeling different, we've looked at, and also the feeling of, what's the other one? We don't always feel as safe as we should. But anyway, hypervigilance and dissociation on triggers is the other main one. They're my top 3 when I think about CSA, and I'm just wondering, when you think about SSA, would it be similar, or how do you see that?
I do. I really see it similar. I think as far as dissociation, I was doing a little bit of research on dissociation, and I think it wasn't just about siblings, but just in the family, it's any incest, it's higher likelihood, because I think because that's shame, because the family dynamic, like I think I was saying before, the crossover sort of between the general incest, there's a lot of overlap because of the family dynamic. And then CSA, where some of it is in the family and some's not. So we're sort of that intersection of, family and CSA, and a little bit more intensified, I think, with some of the issues. I mean, I think the triggers are going to be the same, not the same triggers, but we're going to be triggered or dissociating is pretty common, actually. I think I saw 40 to 60% of people with child sexual abuse might be not even just dissociating in general, dissociative amnesia, where they're not remembering the events at all. So that's pretty common. in that. So I think it is very similar. I think, again, the differences are that the sibling sexual abuse tends to go on for longer time. I think on average, it's about 5 years is what they're saying. So I don't know with other cases of non-sibling for childhood sexual abuse. I don't know what the statistics are.
You mean, sorry, just to clarify, a sibling sexual abuse experience is usually 5 years, or the dissociative
I'm sorry, the experience.
The experience,
So then,
can
like, the
be
more
on average
intensity
5
and
years.
the longer the duration and the intensity of it tends to make people dissociate more as well. So there's several reasons that dissociative amnesia will occur, and those are other ones. So I think because of what happens in sibling sexual trauma, it's more likely that dissociation. Again, I don't know statistics. I know that several of the things like intensity and even telling your mother and they're not believing you. There's about 5 or 6 things that go for anyone of child sexual abuse that falls into those categories as well. So, but I know that sibling sexual abuse tends to last. The abuse itself tends to last. I don't know. I shouldn't say longer, but pretty long.
Yeah,
so,
a long time.
And it can be like mine, one day, or it can be multiple years, and it can go from touching to full rape and torture. It does the whole gamut. So yeah, I think all those same aspects of child sexual abuse are definitely true.
And excited about the work you're doing in this space with the 5 waves and with your clinic, your website and what you're offering people. There's a lot of people across the world who are needing help and support, so it's really great to know that you're there. So Maria, is there anything you would offer in the way of advice or I guess techniques that you found help you on your journey of recovery through this?
Techniques. I guess, just one advice: never give up, even when it seems like it's the hardest thing and you're not going to make it. Just keep working because it gets better. As far as techniques, I guess just trying lots of different things too. I love the myofascial work. It's intense and it's not easy, but it worked for me. But I was also, making sure I was getting especially with pain, when you're dealing with pain and it's hard to get out and be active and do all these other things that they say to do, move. And I couldn't move for a while. But slowly I was able to. When that pain came down after my memory came back, then I started to, now I can start to do the movement stuff. And I've tried, I'm not so good with meditation, not really my thing. So I walk and sometimes I could garden after a while. So doing things, getting grounded in things like that is helpful too. So there's a lot of things you can do on your own. Therapy, I couldn't have gotten where I am without therapy. But there's lots of things, and I just kept reading everything I could find on, started with the pain, then the mind-body connection, then trauma, and all these things everything started to make sense. It just was logical how my brain is working. It's working to heal. It's working to help me. It's working to protect me. But now it's sort of stuck. So I got to help it get unstuck, and I just got to keep working. So I guess keep trying what works for you, because what somebody else says may not be what's best for you and what feels most comfortable to you. So,
And I think that's wonderful advice, actually, for our audience, as well as, not everything that worked for me or worked for Maria will work for you, and one size doesn't fit all is basically what Maria's saying, and I like your take on that. So I guess as we're coming to a close now, there's lots and lots of issues around this. This doesn't just stay in someone's mind. It emerges in the body, it emerges in relationships, it emerges in our self-concept and self-esteem, and how we're able to connect out in the world. And it's through people like Maria that we're actually then able to make a little more sense and perhaps find a wee bit of a beacon of light. So really appreciate you, Maria. And is there anything you would like to add just as we're finishing up today?
One thing I didn't mention, I did want to say, is there's a Siblings 2 website that you can anonymously tell your story, just write it down, and it's going actually for research. Just it's not used, your name's not with it. They can't even track the website or anything that it's coming from, or the computer that it's coming from. So if you want to tell in that way, it's not
fantastic,
so dangerous. Yes, so siblings2.com is a great website.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, just good luck. Good luck. And yeah, find people who can listen, and if they don't respond as you hoped,
find someone else.
Take a deep breath and find someone else.
Yeah. And I love that. And we're going to have all of these links to Siblings 2 at the bottom of the show notes, so you will be able to reach out.
Right. Yeah, the Siblings 2 website, and then the siblingsexualtrauma.com is the resource as well. Yes,
awesome. Okay, stay on the line, Maria. So thank you to Maria. Isn't she great? Gosh, I'm going to go and look all that up. So thank you so much to her. And for you guys out there, thank you so much for supporting this work. We are looking at developing this further. If you would like to have more information, please go to gloriamasters.com. Please also feel free to share this, like this, and subscribe so other SSA survivors out there can get some help as well. That would be great. Finally, if you would like to donate to the cause, please go to gloriamasters.com and click on the donate button. In the meantime, angels are everywhere. Look after your lovely selves.